Hello, and welcome to Astrology Level 1. I want to talk to you about the 12 Hercules labors and the significance with astrology and why you're going to learn one per astrology sign. So, who was Hercules? Hercules was a son of Zeus who was half divine and half human. His earthly mother was Alcime. Hera, who was Zeus's wife and interfered every time that he had a child out of wedlock, would make the child's life or the mother's life impossible. It was sort of like an act of possession and to really show Zeus who the ruler was. So the story around Hercules, like most of these half or demigods, is that they have one divine parent and one earthly parent. And they resemble the metaphor of us. We have a divine spark within, and we're flawed in the human flesh. So Hercules is a metaphor for our own spiritual journey. In the program, with each sign, you're going to learn one of Hercules' labors. These labors do not go in the order the way that it is written in the ancient texts. They're linked one to each step or each truth of the spiritual path. And so in that sign that you learn about yourself or with your client, linked to that sign in that house is something deeper, what we call esoteric mythology, to go much deeper into the spiritual path beyond just the archetype or the house or the lower mundane mythology that we learn in astrology. So there's something really great about Hercules' birth story. When he was getting birthed, Hera was there and she tried to intimidate the midwife. But the midwife was really, really smart, and she knew that Hercules needed to be born, as we need to be born. Any idea or any concept that we are not here intentionally is nonsense. We're here for a reason. We may not always know, and it doesn't mean that we don't have pain and suffering in our lifetime, but there is a bigger reason for our life here, and Hercules represents this. So Hercules is getting birthed, and the midwife, Hera, is saying, don't let Alcime birth Hercules. And all of a sudden, she distracts the attention away from Hercules and the birth. And she's like, look, a cat. And Hera looks over, and at that moment, Alcime is able to birth Hercules. There was divine assistance. There was some reason that you were here. Even if your parents didn't plan your birth, the soul needed this body to come and do a bigger mission. And that's one of the reasons why we study these esoteric myths and we study these labors of Hercules. The book that I use in our program is Alice Bailey's Labors of Hercules. I highly recommend it, but if you don't want to buy it, we go very in depth with the labors, what they mean, symbology, mythology, and the spiritual path. I've developed 12 truths to a spiritual path. Every spiritual tradition, philosophy, religion includes these 12 truths. We're just not always spelled out or indicated which is where, or some are missing, but they're always there in a true spiritual path. So in addition to the mundane mythology, the planetary archetypes, the psychological piece, you're going to be studying about a spiritual path. Astrology is a spiritual journey. You can read the myth of Gilgamesh and you can see the entire spiritual or astrological wheel spelled out. Joseph Campbell in his monomyth was identifying that every single hero's journey was actually following the astrological path. And so we've aligned these 12 labors in order of the astrology path, beginning with the truth of thought that we identify in Aries with Hercules' labor of the man-eating mares, ending with the cattle of Geiron in Pisces, which is our return home to the universal consciousness. Now, why was Hercules given these labors? Once he was born, Hera was very, very angry. They tried tricking her into believing that this was her child, hence giving him the name Hercules or Heracles. But she knew it wasn't her child. And so what she did was she put him in a fit of rage where he killed his wife and his children. So there's an element of karma We don't necessarily know why we're on earth. We don't know why we're put through our tasks and our labors in our lifetime. But we know that there was a previous karma, a previous misdeed, as Hercules indicated. And through that karma or that low level consciousness, he is sort of forced into the earth to live out these labors, just like us. And so this spells out our spiritual path. When you're doing a reading or when you're looking at your own chart, you can look at the sign that's indicative of the labor, the house, and primarily the cusp to indicate how you're living out the spiritual path. Aries is always the beginning. So whatever cusp you have in Aries is going to indicate where your spiritual path begins. And you can start to layer on the planets and the archetypes. So the first labor, which is Aries, is the capture of the brood of the man-eating mares. This is the truth of thought. The second labor linked to Taurus, the Taurus cusp and Venus, is the capture of the Cretan bull. This is the truth of desires. Labor 3 is Gemini, the third house, or where you have Gemini cusp and Mercury, the gathering of the golden apples of Hesperides. This is the truth of emotion and breath and also illusion, and not getting enamored with illusion, especially on the spiritual path with teachers that promise false, that are false and promises and false prophets. Labor 4 is Cancer, where you have the moon. It is linked to the capture of the doe, and it has to do with instinct, intellect, and intuition. Labor 5 is Leo, or the fifth house, or where you have the Leo cusp or the sun, and is the slaying of the Nemean lion. This is linked to the truth of ego, personality, and will. And when these all combine, they lead us to our divine will and our divine purpose. Labor 6 is the girdle of Hippolyte. It is linked to Virgo, the cusp of Virgo, Chiron in the chart. It can also be linked to Mercury, the old ruler. This is sort of the day in and day out. This is called the truth of purification. This is linked to purifying our thoughts through our body, how our body is the vessel and shows us everything. This is the mind, body, spirit connection. So let me stop a moment in here and tell you that Hercules indeed did pass all the labors, but he failed 2 of them, meaning he had to go back and do them again. That was labor 1, truth of thoughts, the man-eating mares, and labor 6, the truth of purification, which is the body. That is the mind, body, spirit connection. Every single day we have to look at our thoughts, and every single day we have to nourish or use our body for good, take care of the vessel so that we can live our divine spirit. Labor 7 is the capture of the Arrhythmian boar, and this is truth of fun and balance, where you have Libra, the cusp of Libra, the 7th house, and Venus. Labor 8 is destroying the Lernaean Hydra. This is linked to Scorpio. This is called the truth of the shadow, is linked to the 8th house, the cusp, where you have Scorpio. And this is what needs to die or be brought to the light in yourself. You cannot continue on a spiritual path without confronting your Hydra or your shadow. Labor 9 is the myth of the Stymphalian birds, and it's Sagittarius. This is the truth of wisdom and mentorship. This is labor 10, slaying of Cerberus, the guardian of Hades. It is linked to Capricorn, to Saturn, the cusp of Saturn or Capricorn in your chart, and the 10th house. Labor 11 is linked to Aquarius and Uranus, or the cusp where you have Aquarius. Cleaning of the Augean stables, and it is linked to Truth 11, the truth of service. Labor 12 is the capture of the red cattle of Geryon. It's linked to Pisces, the truth of unity, wherever you have Neptune, Pisces, or the cusp of Pisces. Thank you.